And of course, you know that bright, jumpy, bouncy music can mean only one thing.
It'll wake you up.
That'll wake you up and, do all kinds of things. Coach Carol is in the house. Coach Carol Phillips. And Coach Carol, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Ken?
I am doing great. You know, I feel terrific. I'm energized. I was at the Celtics game last night, and they won. Great game.
Terrific. You got your Celtics shirt
I do.
on.
I have my Celtics shirt on today to celebrate and have a great show with you. We had a great last hour. I got a chance to vent a little bit about a couple of things. You know?
Venting can be a good thing.
I always feel better, feel energized when I do that. So we were talking just briefly off the air, and before we introduce Armand to our audience, you and your group, that infamous group known as...
Which one? Leadership Greater Manchester?
Yeah, that one. That one.
Yes.
That one. Yes, go ahead. You had a little field trip yesterday.
We did. Silver Tech hosted us for a little tour and lunch, and we got to go up into the clock tower where the bell is. It's the old Ash Street School building.
Yeah.
And Silver Tech has renovated it. It's absolutely gorgeous, but we got to go way up in the clock tower and see how everything works, and it was very exciting. And thank you so much to Silver Tech for hosting Leadership Greater Manchester for a little informal tour. But, you know, just all the Manchester history, it's so exciting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Was John Clayton up there, too?
John Clayton was there.
Wow.
He's
John
a fun guy
Clayton
to...
in a bell tower.
He's a fun guy to tease.
You could make some jokes out of that one, huh?
Well, you know, it was great having him there, too, because he was throwing out some additional Manchester history.
There is nobody knows the history of Manchester like John Clayton. Nobody.
He's a walking Wikipedia.
He's something else. That's for sure. He's something else. I'm not sure, but by the way, just to mention, John, the final day of the great exhibit at the Milliard Museum about all the Manchester theaters and their history, and there have been many, many, many over the years. Last day is Saturday. I'm saying that more to remind myself because I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's great. I've heard a lot of rave reviews, and I'm going to go Saturday. So, at any rate, Carol, anything else going on in your young life?
Young life. That's kind of debatable. I have to think about that one for a minute. Wait a minute. Now my memory's escaping me. Maybe not so young.
All right. So, do you have anything to add before you introduce Armand here? He's being very patient.
No, we'll get Armand in on the conversation here and throw in some miscellaneous stuff later on. But, yeah, today I'm excited to have Armand Hebert. He's the owner of Hebert Consulting. He's also a business coach. And today we're going to be talking about personality types and how they affect relationships in the workplace. So welcome, Armand.
Wow.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Armand, great to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
So I would love to start by asking you how you ended up not only becoming a business coach, but focusing on personality types, personality testing, and how it affects employees in the workplace.
I've been working with behavior styles for, probably 12, 14 years, and just really started studying how life could be easier if you started recognizing someone's behavior style. It's kind of interesting that how when you can start approaching someone in a way that they want to hear things, stress levels come down, they're able to hear your message, and the wall doesn't go up immediately because it's not a personal attack. So my philosophy is always, it's not the message, it's how it's delivered. Because I've had to deliver some very delicate situations, and if you word it correctly and that person hears it the way they want to, they're open to your suggestions and they're easier to coach, okay, and get them to where you want to be. So the same thing can happen in the workplace when people are trying to motivate a team, or even more importantly, I do a lot of pre-hiring assessments, meaning that we look at a person's behavior style. We use a Hartman values and motivators assessment, a Harvard part of assessment. So we use 3 assessments to bring them together. So not only can we discover what their behavior style is, but we can also understand what motivates them to do what they do. which is sometimes even more important. Because if your motivators don't align with the company culture, then you're never going to ever feel like you're part of the team, and you're probably going to leave sooner than later because you don't have that tie to it.
Right. And perception is everything.
Oh, everything. If you look at, studies have shown that, just a bad salary hire for a company is costing them $7,000 on the entry level. An executive is $50,000 plus. So if you start looking at a company, the number of bad hires they've had in the last year, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you invest in doing the assessments and make sure you get the right people, then you can reduce those costs drastically. And not only that, Carol, you're always talking about stress whenever I talk to you. Think about the stress of someone new coming into a company on both parts. And they walk into a room and they don't feel like they fit, and the people that are already there say, this person isn't going to ever be part of our culture, isn't going to fit into us. How do I communicate with them and everything like that? If you could take that first stress in the 90 days out of the picture by giving them that information, imagine how more successful people would be.
Right. And if people have totally opposite personality types, they're talking two different languages.
Correct. And it's not that that's a bad thing, because each behavior style brings a certain dynamic to the team that makes, because you don't want all one behavior style on a team, because there's certain behavior styles that don't have any structure.
That's a perfect point, because everybody has strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely.
And I
prefer to call them challenges rather than weaknesses.
There you go.
Okay?
Challenges.
It sounds a lot more team building wording, let's put it that way.
Right. And it's really easy for somebody to look at somebody who's an opposite personality type and see their challenges as just negatives.
Absolutely.
And make assumptions and then start putting the wall up instead of building a positive relationship.
And the other way they look at it is that person's just doing it to upset me.
Oh, right.
Or to anger me, or to poke me with the hot poker or whatever. And once you start teaching the team that they're not doing it just to upset you, they're doing it because they're being them.
Right.
So my philosophy is always, could you realize that they're just being them? Could you realize that when you do that, it bothers this person? So could you do it a little less often, and could you be a little more tolerable? Let's come to a happy medium. Because nobody should have to change their entire personality, because that's never going to work.
Right. And more companies now are looking at the whole person and people's attitudes, not just the skills.
Absolutely. My philosophy of companies I work with is we can teach skill to a certain level. We can't change attitudes.
Right.
Either you have the right attitude that's going to fit in that culture, or you don't. And that makes a big difference, especially with a smaller company. Look at a small company. You get 10 to 50 employees. A couple of bad hires makes a huge difference. Whereas if you are a huge, multi-faceted company, a few bad hires, yeah, you can hide them, and it's figured part of the price of operation or cost.
Right.
You're going to have some failure rate. So they can absorb that cost a little easier than smaller companies.
And I don't know what figures you typically use, but what I hear is that when an employee needs to be replaced, it typically costs the company 30% of their annual salary just to replace that employee.
Oh, yeah, probably even more if they really look at what the total cost is. Lost of revenue. If you have a bad salesperson, did they ruin some relationships with sales? How much did that cost you?
All the trickle down.
All the trickle down. How much did it cost to re-interview? How much? I mean, I have a worksheet that I hand people when they want to know what their cost of a bad hire is. I had a municipality in the area one day, and they had done 3 bad hires in the last year. And I said, well, what does that cost you? And they go, what do you mean? I go, well, how many people were on the interview? And we came up to that particular municipality lost about $148,000 with those 3 bad hires. By the time they paid somebody overtime to cover the shift, because it was one of those things where they had to have somebody manning the phones and stuff 24/7, overtime, training, everything. So that's a big cost.
And that's even worse if we're talking about a municipality, because that's
right.
taxpayers' money.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that adds up over time.
What's the definition of a bad hire?
A bad hire is someone who you bring in your company who may have the best skills in the world. They don't fit into your culture. They're going to blow your company up. And within 90 days, you're looking at saying, this isn't working out. We need to let you go.
And you talk about the trickle down. What if there's another employee who left in the meantime because of that person, but they didn't say, because they want to keep everything positive, and they say, oh, I just got a better offer.
Absolutely.
And they don't want to badmouth the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So, right.
And that's one thing I always look at is when I come into a company, because often I come in to solve problems. Let's say I'm having a problem with this department. So we come in and we'll do assessments on everybody. And then I'll start looking, and in the motivators and stuff, there's a part that says they're unhappy with their job or they lack direction. So when I get 3 or 4 that are under a certain supervisor, I look at the owner and say, we got a problem with management.
Right.
Because one person looking, all right, I'm willing to accept it. But if I have 50% of that department that says they lack direction and they're unhappy with their present role, then we've got a problem here.
Right.
So now we need to look at, okay, why? And then we do some debriefs and we kind of get some ideas of where we need to go.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about the different personality types and give a little, well, let me back up for a minute. What model do you typically use for your assessments?
I use DISC, which is recognized in, I think it's like 54, 56 countries throughout the world as a base for behavior styles. Then we go into using a Hartman values assessment and a Hartman motivators assessment and a Harvard values assessment. So we combine them all into an executive assessment. So we really get an idea of what the person's behavior style is, what their motivators, and what their values are, which sometimes that's even more important than how they communicate with people, because attitude is more important. So.
Right. The thoughts drive the actions, right?
Absolutely. But with the DISC, if you want me to go through, I'll give you the 4. We used 4 different types of behavior styles.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a little less complicated, what some people would know as Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is a bunch of letters, and it's more complicated. This is more of a user-friendly, I believe, way of looking at behavior styles. So we have the D in DISC, which is our dominant, direct, demanding, decisive, determined people. That they're about 10% of society. Okay, so my point in bringing that up is the fact that we have one. I'm very much a high D. So before I started looking at behavior styles, I would present everything in the way that I wanted it done, right? And if you really think about it, I was lucky if I was connecting with 10% of the room. Okay,
that's a good point.
Okay, so if you look at it that way, how successful do you think I was, or how frustrated do you think I was when I wasn't getting my message out? Okay, so that's the reason why
the cobbler's kids have no shoes.
Yeah, and there was a lot of frustration. But when I started looking at that, I learned to approach people in a different way, which means that my success rate went up. My frustration levels went down because now I knew people weren't just doing things and saying things to upset me. They were doing it because they were being them, and I was able to let them be them. Right. Because they were unique. Then we have our I's, which are our inspiring, influential, impressionable, interactive. Those are the people that are life of the party. Those are the people when you're on stage, you say, I need a volunteer. They're the first ones that got their hand up and they're already standing next to you. You typically dressed in very bright colors and sparkly jewelry and stuff. You have to sometimes bring them in on task. And those people are 25 to 30% of society.
Okay.
Okay. So then we have our S's, which are our biggest segment of society. Okay, they like to be accepted. There are team players. They're cooperative. They love harmony. They really don't like arguments or hostility in the workplace.
Typically not in leadership roles. They like to be part of the group.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say they would just be in industries that don't have to tolerate that. So like nursing, those type of roles. Okay. And like I said, they're 30 to 35% of society. They're very much sweet, steady, really just loving people. And they tend to be laid back. They don't like to be in front of a crowd. They don't like to be drawn attention to.
So they're not going to volunteer.
No. And if you do want them to help you out with something, best thing, if you don't want to upset them, is ask them in advance. Because if you ask them in advance, they're up for it. Because number one, they usually can't say no, which means a lot of times they feel like they've been taken advantage of. Then we have our C's, who are our engineers and that type of thing in the world. They like to be right. They do all their homework. And if something is 99.3%, don't tell them it was 99.5, because they will know it, and they will do the research, and they will call you back and tell you you're off by 0.2 of a point, okay? Because everything has to be precise. They like clear instructions. They love doing A, B, C, D type things. They typically don't like to interact with a lot of people. So going up an I, which is an opposite behavior style, going up and giving them a big hug when they see them will set them right up into orbit, because that is not comfortable for them. That is, you're invading my personal space.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I'm a huggy person. And a few months ago, I hugged somebody who I hadn't seen in a while. And the reaction was very, very clear.
Then they were probably a high C that
like
just...
totally fish out of water, and made some funny comment about, okay, that's one of the 2 hugs I give each year.
Yes, definitely a high C, okay? So if you see them at like a networking event, they're usually standing against the wall, talking to 1 or 2 people, and that the reason why they stand against the wall is so nobody can sneak up on them and surprise them, or give them a hug. But they're about 20-25% of society. Okay, but we do need those people. They're very important, because those are the people that make sure when we build a bridge that all the numbers match and all we can, how much weight we can handle. When we're building skyscrapers, to make sure they stay standing. Those are the people that pay attention to extreme detail. And they tend to move very slowly, because they're always calculating everything, whether it be a conversation. If you talk to them out in the public, they might even be thinking, well, why is that person talking to me?
Yep.
Okay, so that's how calculating they are.
Interesting. So the way you just described that was great. And so it makes me wonder, I'm sure that has a lot to do with what they choose for careers.
Yeah, it does. But the problem is that sometimes people get drawn to careers for emotional.
Right.
Like my dad did this, or my mom did this, or my dad or my grandfather told me I should be doing this. And then what they do is they get dragged into a career path that maybe doesn't serve their behavior style well.
That makes total sense.
That's why a lot of times when you see, talk to people, especially entrepreneurs, they've started out as in a different career path out of college, and they're doing something totally opposite. It's because, they thought that that's what they wanted to do, but then they realize over time that wasn't going to be good for them. For example, I have a very dear friend of mine. His girlfriend started working out of their house on the phone all day by herself. She's very much a high I. And I looked at her and I said, why are you taking this job? And she goes, well, what do you mean? I go, you're going to end up hanging yourself in about 6 months here, girl. So soon after, he's complaining to me that, every time I go home, she just wants to go out. We got to go out for supper. We got to do this. He goes, at the end of the day, I just want to go home, kick back, and with some music and enjoy the evening. But she's always,
she's feeling trapped.
I go, that's because she's been cooped up in the office all day, and she needs to go out and have some human interaction, because her behavior style doesn't do that. But just recently, about 3 weeks ago, I got a call from her, says, hey, I got a new job. So she's out working in a hospital and getting some human contact. And now she's coming home and she's ecstatic because she can come home and enjoy her home, rather than always want to be on the go. So that's how those behavior styles affect people.
Very interesting.
No, it is really. Do you ever come across people who are totally in the wrong job?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I get that once in a while. Actually, sometimes it's business owners. They'll start a business, and I'm going, here's a prime example. We get a lot of times, these people that create great software, and they're engineering type people because
Right.
they're paying attention to detail, because that's what you need when you write code and
So
stuff.
they'd be C's, right?
Right, yeah, the high C's.
Yeah, high
and they
Cs.
start this
Yeah.
business because we're going to market this and we're going to make millions and everything else, but they don't realize their challenge is getting out in front of the public and speaking about it,
Right.
okay? Or going out and driving sales, because they don't have that. But they need to start building a team around them that complements what their strengths are and overcomes their challenges. And when you can start putting together teams like that, it's just awesome, because productivity is going up. Everybody has self-worth on the team. Everybody knows what their defined role is and what they're great at. And it can take a company, I always, Steve Jobs once said, a small group of A players can run circles around a large group of B and C players. And if you really think about that, that's true. So if you're hiring those A players for your type of profession and what you're looking for, your productivity, your profitability, and everything else is just going to be ecstatic. Because one of the number one reasons people leave their job is because they're unhappy. It's not
Right.
always the money.
No, not the
Money
money.
is not always the object. To some behavior styles, yes, and depending on where they are in their life, as far as money goes, yeah.
Right.
But a lot of people, if they are happy with their job, you have them for a good amount of time, unless you mess it up. There is loyalty there, believe it or not, but you have to earn it.
Yeah.
Right, and the people who are happiest with their jobs and the most loyal are the first ones to say, "I would do this work for free."
Right. And not only that, they're the last person, unless they're extremely ill, that are going to call in sick.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
True.
And you know that happiness does affect your well-being.
Right.
I mean, you preach that all the time, Carol.
Yep.
I mean, so when you have a happier staff, not only that, think about this. How many times have you called someplace and you get somebody on the phone, you go, oh, my God, that company must be awful to work for because they're unhappy.
Right.
All right? You have to love what you do.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just had this analogy jump in. Well, not really analogy, but I was just picturing you help companies put a puzzle together and get the puzzle pieces to fit really well, as opposed to a company where they're trying to put a puzzle together and it's all pieces from different puzzles. It's never going to work.
I always, whenever I start with a company, that, of course, the owner or CEOs always say, well, why do we need to do assessments on everybody? I said, well, let me ask you this. If you hurt your leg, would you just go to the hospital and put a cast on, or would they do an x-ray first? We need to do an x-ray to see what is working, what is not working, who's our A players, who are B players. Sometimes a D player in one position could be an A player in another position. So if we can start looking at how to shuffle some people around, we could actually take a staff that's working mediocrely and make them A players if we can.
Right. And if you go to the ER, where you're feeling the pain might not be where the problem is once they take the x-ray.
Absolutely.
So just like in a company where they think the problem is, that might not be the root of the problem at all.
Absolutely. And 80% of the time, that's true. Because
Wow.
if we start peeling back that onion, as they always say,
Right.
you start looking at it, you say, oh, wait a minute, here's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We need to solve this first, and once we solve that, then we can build off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's terrific. Wow.
Some interesting stuff here from Armand Hebert of Hebert Consulting. Interesting segment, Carol, as always. I'd hug you anytime, by the way.
Thanks.
I've never
Right
refused
back
a
at you,
hug
Ken.
from you. Welcome back. It's the Coach Carol Phillips segment of our program. 3:35 is the time. Coach Carol, always good to see you. Resplendent in blue today.
Blue. It's a blue day.
With your new hairstyle.
Not meaning unhappy, but
No. Well, we hope you're not blue.
yeah, my terrific hairdresser, she does a good job on my hair.
Did it
and
again.
Every now and then I have her curl it, and so yeah.
All right. Very good.
Anyways, for all those people who can't see what's going on in
That's
this
right.
studio.
That's right. Armand is here, Armand Hebert, and Armand from the Hebert Consulting firm or company, or what do you call it?
Just consulting.
Just consulting.
Yeah.
Yes. And so how did you get started on what you do?
You want the short version or the long
No, we've
version?
got all day.
Okay. Basically, out of high school, went into the Coast Guard for 4 years. Wanted to be a chef and got my formal training there. So I served in the Coast Guard for 4 years down in Hull, Massachusetts, at a small boat station.
You protected the broadcast tower of WBZ down
There
in
you
Hull,
go.
right?
Yeah.
That was it. It was a public service.
Yeah. But in the same token, I also did, drug enforcement and everything else that goes along with being in the Coast Guard, because such a small organization, you
Right.
pretty much have to do everything. Got out of there, was a chef at the Elliott Hospital for like 13 years. Decided at one point that I wasn't a corporate fit. My wife and I bought a travel agency, Ambassador World Travel. Ran that for about 6 or 7 years. We still own it, but she just runs it now. Always had an interest in helping people develop business, and got introduced to Referral Institute, which was a franchise for coaching consulting on referral marketing. So I got my coaching designator there, got introduced to behavior styles, got certified and everything like that. Started my business there, gave up my franchise and started Hebert Consulting about 8 years ago. During that time, about 3 years ago, I got introduced to a gentleman, Greg Smith from Maui Consulting. He lives over in Hawaii. And he's the gentleman that actually put together this assessment that I use with combining all three assessments. And Greg has been studying under him for a couple years, and now we kind of collaborate on a lot of things. Greg just landed Toyota USA as
wow.
he's going to be
Pretty good client,
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
say. Yeah.
So this type of assessment's only been out for about 3 years, and it's really new to the market. And when you really start looking at it, it really sets itself out from the other ones. And this assessment I was always doing new hire consulting, but was missing something. And now I'm not missing anything, meaning that I truly can say if this person is going to be a good fit or not.
Nice.
And that's really cool when you could do that. Companies that I'm working with now, after the first couple hires, they won't hire anybody unless they do an assessment now. Matter of fact, one of the gentlemen that I've been working with for 7 or 8 years, his wife was very upset about her current position in her job, and they were looking to expand, and they needed a VP of admin, and we both were out on our Harleys one day and sitting up by Winnipesaukee, and he goes, wife's thinking about coming into the business, but I told her she couldn't quit her job until you approved her. And that tells you how powerful that is. Sure. And we went through the whole process.
Yeah.
And she was a little upset at first, but I told her, I point out to her, you've seen how much success I've had with your husband and growing his business and getting the right people. And I know you're unhappy where you are, but if you're not going to be a good fit here, that's okay. But let's go find something you're going to be a good fit at. And she says, yeah. I go, because if you come in and you're not a good fit here, not only are you going to cause problems within the company, but you also could destroy your marriage. You think about that. That's even more powerful. So it's things like that that really make me feel great about it. One day I did a assessment on a young man. He's probably 26, 27 years old. And we did it on a Friday, and he kind of understood what he was now. And he went home, and I got an email Sunday night. He goes, Armand, he goes, thank you for your time on Friday. But I just have a whole new relationship with my 4-year-old son now.
Oh, that's
because he
amazing.
understood how to change his approach,
Nice.
why his child was, he identified his behavior style. And you think about that, that's pretty powerful when you can change a relationship from 4 years old on for a father and son relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that was
Priceless.
that was the most heartwarming. When I got that email, I'm like, that's pretty cool.
That
to be able to
really
do
is
that
amazing.
That
for
is terrific.
father and son.
So,
It works
Not-
on social,
right,
every
outside the
relationship.
corporate world.
I always tell everybody, 90% of the problems in the world are communication.
Right.
The way that people are speaking to each other, not coming to a common ground and things like that. And when we
So-
can do that, life could be a lot easier.
Right. So do you work with individuals and families too?
It tends to bleed over from the business world because it's always kind of funny when I get somebody, because you always get that one person that's not me. I go, well, yeah, these things, I'm sorry, but they're pretty usually like 95% correct. And if it's not you, it means you didn't answer the questions correctly. Okay? And, well, no. So I just look at him and says, married, what? Yeah, I got a wife. Well, good. You bring that home tonight, you have her read it. And if there's anything she disagrees with, you have her call me. I have never gotten a phone call.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I've gotten comments when I finally meet the wife is, geez, if I'd have known that, maybe I wouldn't have married him.
So, Armand, how do people get in touch with you?
You can find it off our website, which is www.armandhebert.com.
Okay, that's easy.
Okay. It can also be found on LinkedIn. Have a LinkedIn account, Armand Hebert. So there's a number of different ways, or the phone number, not that anybody, if they're driving, is going to be able to write it down, but it's 603-232-8216.
Okay, great. So armandhebert.com.
Absolutely.
Great.
And as always, when somebody's got some issues, I'd love to sit down with them and just the first hour's on me, just to see if I can help you and how we can do that.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So talk about some of the feedback you get from companies regarding reducing the stress and some of the other advantages that they didn't even expect that they report back to you.
Some of it varies. It usually bleeds over into their personal life, meaning that some people will say, geez, well, number one, anybody that just does an assessment is self-aware of their strengths and their challenges, it's statistically proven will be 10% more productive throughout their entire life.
Wow.
Okay, so you think about that, your entire life, 10% more productivity. That's pretty powerful. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that people, they will say, oh, wow, that's why my husband or my wife pushes my buttons with that. And now they're a little more forgiving because, as you know, problems at home bleed into your business life.
Right.
I don't care how hard you try to put that wall up, but that does happen. And a matter of fact, when I do debrief some people in business, I'll look at them and says, what's going on in your personal life? Because it's not their performance in their business world is pretty much where it needs to be, but the personal stuff is bleeding over. And if we don't get that taken care of, then it will bleed into the work, and that's where we have people that are going to be at risk.
Right.
And
people go to work and, they don't just turn into a different person. They're bringing their personality. They're bringing their personal problems. They're bringing their health problems. And the more that employers can understand that and embrace it instead of rejecting it can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And the other thing that, if you look at even those issues with teams, because everybody that works with other people, there's that one person that just rubs you the wrong way. Whether it's a client, whether it's on your team, in your company, it could be even the person that you go and pick up your coffee at the counter in the morning. You look at somebody, you say, I'll step back one because I don't want to get her again, because they just rub you the wrong way. And it's often because they've got something going on, or they just don't realize that the way that they're approaching the world is bothering people.
Right.
Or it's a negative reaction. And it's very important. So
interesting.
Our guest is Armand Hebert of Hebert Consulting, and Coach Carol Phillips is here. And 52 Simple Ways to Health is her book. Great book, double award winning. Did you know that, Armand?
Yes, I did.
2 outstanding awards for that book.
I didn't realize she had an audio book up, though.
Well, there you go. You're going to get
I
that.
learned something today.
You're going to make sure you have that.
Audio book. It's on ebook.
Okay.
It's on audible.com, Amazon, Walmart.com.
You're all over the place.
So what would you say? How do you evaluate yourself after hearing this DISC evaluation? What category would you put yourself in?
Oh, geez. I'll defer to the expert here because Armand's known me for, 4 years now? I would love to get your feedback.
So here you go.
Just totally on the spot.
Right on the radio and everything.
That's an easy one. I pretty much peg people when I walk into a room. Because when we look at things, we also look at the way someone's dressed, the what they have on for jewelry, and put that whole picture together. And you're definitely a DI combination. Those would be your top 2, depending on the social environment, which would mean if you're more in a social setting, your I probably comes up higher than your D. But in the work mode, your D comes up.
Okay, interesting. And I love a really good balance of being out with people and having my alone time. And that's one thing that I've noticed over the years. And like, I can feel it when, if I've been alone for a while, it's just like, okay, I'm craving some human interaction.
Oh, yeah. If I'm working out of my office at my house, most days it's about 2:00 and I go, I got to go to the bank or something because I need to see somebody besides the dog because, he just sleeps anyway. So
Interesting. Interesting.
Now, when I heard
thank
this,
you.
I put myself, I don't know how Armand would read me. He's known me for all of a half hour now. But I would have put myself in the S category.
yeah, the way you're dressed, you're more not really flashy, kind of set back. Did you buy your ring or did someone give it to you?
It was given to me.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So you're an S.
Yeah.
Because see, S's typically won't go out and buy things from themselves. So if you ever want to know if somebody has a piece of jewelry on, or a woman or a man, if you say, "Well, where'd you get that?" and they say, "Oh, someone bought that for me," then you're right in the S category. But if we have a D or an I, it'll be, "Oh, well, I bought this, and it was at Macy's or wherever,
Right,
and
right.
it cost or." In the Virgin Islands or my cruise or wherever, but they will tell you where they bought it and
You
why.
already know what the answer is
Yeah,
going to be.
I did buy my watch on a cruise for $10.
Because it was a bargain, right?
It was a bargain, and I'm Scottish, so there you go. I take advantage of every bargain I can. And it's a good bargain to have Coach Carol on every couple of weeks. Be a better bargain to have her on every week, but every 2 weeks she does a tremendous
I love it.
job.
It's great.
And brings some great guests like you, Armand, on the show. Back. 3:52 is the time, heading down the home stretch in this segment. Coach Carol Phillips here with Armand Hebert of Hebert Consulting. It's been a very interesting hour. And Armand, just let me ask you, do you work mostly with smaller companies, larger companies, or
Pretty much all aboard.
Yeah,
I've worked with single proprietors right
Yeah.
up to, had a sales call last year with the Boston Celtics.
Really?
Nice.
So,
That's why I wore their shirt today. 'cause I
There you
knew
go.
that. Yeah.
There
There you go.
And obviously this assessment works. Obviously, if Toyota USA is buying in on it, obviously they see some great value there. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, proven model. That's great.
Yeah.
so.
No question about it. And industries all over companies all over the map. I mean, different businesses and what have you. in
Yeah,
terms of
everything
what they
from
do. Yeah.
high tech to sports teams to
How about broadcasting? Remember involved in
broadcasting. Yeah,
broadcasting?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's right down to tradespeople.
Yeah.
Tradespeople are even more interested because they want to know if that person's going to answer the phone if they're on call or not.
Yeah.
Because we can tell them. I can tell them that. So that makes a big difference.
All walks of life, then.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Wow.
Very, very good.
So, Armand, tell us which two personality types are the polar opposite, if you will, where there's the most friction in a workplace, what specifically they misunderstand about each other, and what you do to change that.
Well, the ones that typically have the most issue are Ds. Okay, because as I said, they're only 10% of society. Okay, so the exact opposite of a D, or polar opposite, as you like to describe it, would be our S's. And the reason why that is the fact that Ds are very much demanding people, and they want things done today. Matter of fact, they want them done yesterday if they could have, if they would have remembered to ask for it. S's can't say no, even though they've got so much work ahead of them, they can't do it. And D's have a delivery system of bullet points, kind of conversations. I need this, 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 and done, and I need it done in 15 minutes. Well, S's like to hear, how was your weekend? How was your lunch? Those type of different things. And so when they just get into the conversation without giving that soft warm-up, then well, that person's just demanding. And then what happens is they never say no, and then they get themselves backed into the corner, and then when they do, they just lash out. They just let everything go. And it's like, backing a cat in a corner and then expecting not to get clawed.
So they got to learn to speak each other's language.
We have to
So,
wrap it up. Armand,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so
Great
much,
job.
Armand.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank
What is
you.
your thought for the day,
Great
Coach Carol?
conversation. Yep, thanks. And we'll be back. I'll be back on January 26th, 3 o'clock. And my closing quote is, don't get my personality and my attitude confused. My personality is me. My attitude depends on you.
Oh, there you go. She's a D, I'm an S, so we're in trouble here.
There you go.